And if I look at, trends over time and history and the rise and fall of civilizations, you get to a point where anytime there's a big enough discrepancy between people that have stuff and people that don't, and the group of people that have nothing to lose gets big enough, things are going to change in one of three ways.
Spit that shit out, man! That's on Flick Script.
Michael is here.
Bruno
in the studio with
Michael
us.
Bruno
This is awesome.
is in the studio. Our first guest since before COVID,
with a glorious mustache and beard.
He claims he's vaccinated, though I haven't looked at his card.
He doesn't look very healthy.
Definitely got that double Fauci ouchies.
Nice.
Michael, how do we tell the listeners about you?
Oh, where to start? I mean, besides being like a general degenerate.
Well, that is why we have you here. Michael demanded a bowl full of beer be placed in front of him before he agreed to come into the room.
Is that what that leafy substance is in there?
That's right. And
I didn't know I was signing up for an ayahuasca trip.
Michael, beyond having the best mustache in the room.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Marty.
Sorry,
your beard,
Marty.
Shade it, Marty.
All right.
Marty, your beard, the whole beard situation, the Hemingway-esque beard, wins my day.
It's
but if we're
lovely.
talking about just mustache,
Yeah, I got to concede that.
Michael wins the day.
I got to concede that.
I'm pretty sure you had a pretty solid cop mustache back in the day.
Bad cop mustache. Like the bad lieutenant, yeah.
what's the difference between a good cop and a bad cop mustache?
More importantly,
all about
what's the
the
difference
love.
between a good mustache and a bad mustache?
Yeah, but there are good mustaches. Like Tom Selleck without a mustache, you don't want to see that. That's like seeing a stripper
true.
during the day. Right?
I think the problem
good
is
with
that
all those
Tom
things.
Selleck set the bar so high, nobody can top Tom Selleck.
I think you're right.
And that's the
Except for
problem with
Burt
mustaches.
Reynolds.
Reynolds has a good
Okay.
one.
Reynolds had a good one, man. Bert's my guy, fellow Floridian.
Florida State guy, too. Didn't you play football at Florida
I
State?
played running back at Florida State. Yep. So, Michael, who the hell are you?
Who the hell am I?
What is it that you do? We're going to, well, first of all, Michael was introduced to me by our mutual friend, Pete. Shout out to Pete. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
Appreciate it.
And Michael said, I've got a guy that I think you'd have fun having on the show. He's someone that I work with, but he is a futurist. And I said, what? He said, yeah, he's a futurist. He's always thinking about what's coming down the line, and it's like no specific topic that he necessarily has to stick to. His mind is in several different areas, looking down the road. Super interesting dude, really conversational. You should get in contact with him. So then Michael and I had this an email exchange, and then we said, let's get on Zoom for like 15 minutes and kind of see how it feels and maybe what we might talk about. An hour and a half later, we still hadn't exactly cleared up what we'd talk about in this first episode with him, but it was like, man, you got to come on. Like, we're wasting all this conversation without recording.
Yeah.
So we were able to make it happen today. Thank you for joining us, dude. We really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here. This is fantastic.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about you, and you can kind of back it up with history, or you can tell us a little bit about what you do now and then how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have the best job ever, but with the most boring title possible. So when you go into like check the box in LinkedIn or career surveys or whatever it might be, I'm a risk manager. So that on its face does not sound super interesting.
Sounds like insurance.
Yeah, it sounds like insurance. Or
Yeah.
it sounds like, you're just, pushing numbers around. And while numbers is a part of what I do, and it's part of looking for evidence, it's a lot broader than that. It's about being really wide in your perspective of where and how you're learning and connecting dots. And I think most importantly, if you're in the business of predictions, you're wrong a lot. So it's about kind of monitoring your ego, having enough confidence to have a hypothesis and share that with a degree of measured confidence, but then being willing to change your mind when information changes, whether it's new information that, looking at how a virus is evolving, for example, or a revisionist history of, oh gosh, I never learned that in school, and these factors are impacting things in new ways, and going back and re-adjudicating what you thought was fact, right?
That's an interesting phrase, right? Going back and re-adjudicating what you thought was fact.
Yeah.
Because it can deconstruct everything you thought was real in some ways.
That's chaos theory, right? Like,
yeah.
The whole idea of like, we're pretty good at predicting things under certain situations for a certain amount of time, but eventually everything, including the laws of physics, breaks down the further out you go or the longer the timeline you look
But isn't it just all that baked in? It's always evolving. Everything's evolving. Like your decision-making calculus. You're always going back, aren't you? Isn't that like, wouldn't that be like an everyday thing? That's not an outlier, right?
to ask me a different way, maybe.
Like when your job would be almost every day going back and reevaluating.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think of it in terms of, okay, what is the thing that's true enough right now that I can use to anchor some cognitive thread on? And then, maybe that hitching post that you're on starts to get a little rusty and breaks, or whatever metaphor you want to mix. And you say, well, that worked for a while, but it doesn't work now. And it's not really keeping my train of thought grounded. So
how often are you going back and looking to see if your hitching post is rusty?
Good question.
I mean, I do a yearly physical and get that checked then, but
by the way, a rusty hitching post sounds like something I don't want to experience.
Sounds like a porn movie.
No.
it sounds like a drink at a bar.
A rusty hitching post.
Yeah,
Drink at a bar.
Yeah, like a Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah.
You know what a Jersey Turnpike is?
No.
Yes.
It's when you rub the rag over the bar at the end of the night and you're
Oh my God.
Shit.
No offense to any Jersey listeners.
I thought that was a Pennsylvania Turnpike.
or turnpike drivers.
Or Turnpike
You've seen
drivers.
some of the restrooms on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. You might
Nothing but
change your
love for
mind.
those jug handles.
But no, so I guess I guess I'm just curious about like the evolution, because you see on social media a lot, Fauci or some public health official getting busted because, whoa, he was saying that yesterday and then now it's like, yeah, it's not like Fauci's moving the goalpost, the virus is moving the goalpost. So
Yeah.
aren't the goalposts, do you find that they're always moving?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what I really wanted to.
Certain things are true for a period of time, right?
Right.
And then new information comes to light that makes those things less true or takes you down a path that they might not always be true, right?
Right.
So I'm constantly trying to break what I think I know by just continuing to listen and read dissenting points of view or different points of view. I mean, I feel like it's really easy to go down the crafting of your own kind of media bubble to just get information that continues to confirm what you believe to be true.
Feels good. Yeah, that feels good.
Well, it's validating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I won't lie that if I'm putting together some pieces for a month and then like a week later, a story runs in the New York Times that validates my point of view, I'm like, oh, I guess I was onto something there. But as many times as that happens, that story doesn't come, or maybe something different happens. The ground truth changes, but that's what a prediction is, right? Eisenhower said that planning is useless, but the act of planning is very useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So what do you think he meant by that? Why is the act of planning useful if planning is useless? What does it do? Does it give us a task that leads us toward accomplishing something? Why is it useful?
I think it's useful because it's encouraging a level of thoughtfulness
And a little bit of organization. Like
But also,
I'm sorry,
No,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Britt. I was just going to say the old aphorism, no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. So I can see Eisenhower planning, because you've got to get your ducks in a row. You've got to organize. It helps you broaden your thought about all of the eventualities, but you have to be prepared to change.
Absolutely.
That's what I was getting at. I'm
that's
sorry.
it's like the old Scottish adage: the best laid plans of mice and men oft go awry.
I thought that was Steinbeck.
I don't think. No, I think it's
No, I'm
Scottish.
just kidding. Yeah,
man.
no. Of my.
Well, I think active planning prepares you for hopefully all of the scenarios that you can foresee. So I like what you said, it keeps you engaged. So regardless of whatever scenario you come up against, you hopefully have planned for that.
So I can imagine how spending time in that space for you personally can be like super interesting, and you can go down all kinds of different rabbit holes and paths. And I want to hear about that. Like, I'm super interested in that, but I'm curious initially on how does this skill and proclivity translate to then the work life? Like, how do you apply it to
The private
job?
sector.
Yeah. What is it really that, I guess, where the rubber meets the pavement? What is your job? What is the company hoping to get from you?
Yeah. You'll have to forgive me because I'm constantly talking in metaphors and analogies because business speak makes me nauseous. So
yeah, same here.
Me too.
The way that I describe my job if I'm interacting with somebody at work is that I'm an iceberg spotter up in the crow's nest. And people often talk about large multinational corporations as the aircraft carrier or the tanker that takes a really long time to turn, right? So if we're going to belabor the point of iceberg spotting, it took too long for the Titanic to turn before it bumped up against that iceberg. And if I do my job well enough, there's at least line of sight to those icebergs, and whether or not they break apart or change course or whatever it might be, there's somebody with their eye on the horizon taking a long view to help raise awareness and engage the right people to work on a problem.
So is it really focused on coming dangers with that iceberg metaphor, or is it also focusing on coming opportunities?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that opportunities is people think about risk as don't do something. I think risk is also do something in a calculated way that you think is going to generate benefit in the long term.
So your official title is in risk management, but you are called a futurist. Can you tell us about that?
I honestly, Pete describing that to AJ was the first time I had heard that. So then when AJ had emailed me saying, "Hey, you're a futurist," and I was like, "That's a first, but I kind of like it."
Yeah, I think that
it has
probably
a nice ring to it.
Behind your back, people have been calling you a futurist for a long time.
Yeah,
I'll
sorry
take
to
it.
say,
I wish
Michael.
I wish somebody told me to my face earlier.
Yeah,
It'd be way cooler on my LinkedIn profile. Than
right.
You should put it on there.
Risk manager.
So what is our understanding of what a futurist stands for? And by the way, just to put this in perspective, when Michael walked in today, my mom happened to be here, and I introduced them, and I told her that Michael's a futurist, which she took to mean psychic. So now she wants to be Michael's friend. And as we were walking down to the studio, she said, "Tell him I want to find out when I'm going to die."
Too cute, man.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
But Michael, your job is unique because there's not a lot of people that have a job in the crow's nest. There's a lot of people that have the title risk manager, and they're just cranking through spreadsheets. And like when I moved, well, even my government experience, at the agency and at the bureau, I mean, I had a boss who got a white paper from an analyst, and he gave it to me. He goes, "Hey, Marty, just punch holes into this." Or he wrote something, and he says, "Punch holes through this." Like, tear it up. Show me where I'm wrong, because I'm going to present this to the director or whatever, and I don't want to look like an idiot. So
That sounds good. I would like that job.
Yeah, but
he's hole puncher.
But you're up there, and it seems like you have a wider remit, so to speak. And like when we would take that, everybody had their specialties, so you would take every bit of data you could, just the raw data, geopolitical events, all the potential upheaval, what's going on now, what's predicted in the future, who's predicting it, crunch it all together, come up with some hypotheses, and then add weighted values to all this raw data to help you come up with some conclusions, and then move forward and see what happens. But those meetings were sometimes every day, sometimes every hour, sometimes once a week, but depending on what was going on, if it's, it depends on what's going on.
Yeah.
So, but I see you as more at a high level saying, I think China is going to be, the preeminent superpower in 30 years. And the United States will be a superpower, but it'll be a multipolar world with Europe, America, and then China at the top.
Yeah.
Or some combination thereof. maybe America still maintains its place of preeminence economically and militarily and influentially. Or does that just they all become equal, and are we on shifting sands depending on other factors?
Yeah.
Then that sounds like a cool ass job to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we think about quite a bit.
What are your thoughts about it?
Is the work that you do as sort of as global and multifaceted as Marty suggests, or are you more focused on the product and the company that you work for?
No, I very little of what I have to do on a day-to-day basis has to do with a product that we're launching tomorrow or, something of that nature. It is much more along that long-term time horizon. I wear a couple of different hats. I look at emerging risks, which are what's happening in the here and now, what's going to go on with the Olympics? How is it going to be received? The people of Tokyo or the people of Japan are not super excited about it. Is that going to subside once it gets going? But to your earlier point, Marty, or your question rather, it's not about picking an endpoint. We use a tool in risk management called scenario planning, and it's a little overly simplistic on purpose, where you essentially devise a couple of different realities that could be in a reasonable context. And you'll probably won't land in any one of those like 4 quadrants of a scenario, right? But it might be more like one than another. And there's probably commonality between 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 of those scenarios. We're like, well, we're pretty confident X is going to happen. So regardless, we should be doing Y in preparation for it. So again, it's less about being right about the terminal outcome. It's more about helping to equip people that are running the business on a day-to-day basis with line of sight to what could be, and preparing those folks with the information and potentially the skills or the resources that they would need to help mitigate those.
And ours was doing that, giving that information to policymakers with a different incentive.
Yeah.
The scenarios or the data. Yours were to make profit for the company, and once you get it in the hands of politicians, who knows what the incentives are?
Sure.
We know what they should be, but it's interesting, and it's not just data analysis; it's so much other raw data. I'd love to hear.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
Well, no, I'm asking for a friend. Devil's advocate. Wouldn't somebody just say, "Okay, futurist sounds cool, but science kind of sounds like just being an analyst to me"? So how is that different from being an analyst?
Yeah, I think it's like a square rectangle thing, right? Where what is it? A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't always a square. So being being analytical is certainly a skill set that is requisite in being a futurist or enterprise risk manager, right? So I would say that they're, in this case, you can use them interchangeably, and I think that the analysis you do is just a little bit different depending on where you're focusing that analysis.
Yeah.
I think for me, the interesting part about it is that I'm operating in spaces that I'm not classically trained in, and I'm delving into these topics like, okay, there's a lot of talk about inflation going on right now. Well, what is inflation? How does it work? What's the history of inflation? Like, when did the Fed start worrying about that type of thing? How has it panned out in different societies? How has it been instrumental in social upheaval throughout the history of democracies and whatnot in the world? So I think your analysis never really it's never quite always in a box where like, okay, I'm done. Because the next day you wake up and something new has happened. And I think the reason that I like my job so much is because I look forward to seeing what's going to happen. And this notion of just being done and off your plate is not something that is really compatible. It's not episodic. It's very much continual in the way that you do your work.
Do you love that? That just sounds fascinating to anybody who's a natural student. Do you just love the continued learning and education that you get to give yourself?
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting away with something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're going to get called to the principal's office and reassigned to a different class.
Yeah, like
right?
what are you up to today, Michael?
Yeah.
Well, boss, I'm looking into indigenous cultures in the South Pacific, and how they organize their economies and what led to to their rise and fall and whatnot.
In the South China Sea.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
So,
The next geopolitical cauldron.
yeah, that's a sticky wicket.
Yes,
I'll tell you
it
that much.
Yes.
So where's your head these days? Like what do you find is capturing a lot of your attention these days, professionally and also personally?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of daylight, to be perfectly honest, between my personal kind of passion and where I see what I think about the world, and how that applies to my job. Because I think that go back to the hitching post metaphor, the hitching post that I'm stuck to right now is looking at just a rethinking of late stage growth capitalism and the impact of carbon transition and how that's going to change the world, and whether or not we're going to flourish or flounder navigating through that huge change. It's probably the biggest change that humanity's ever had to reckon with, because everything is so integrated.
What do you see as the realistic timeline that change is going to take place in?
Well, I think within the next 10 years, we're going to see public markets respond to whether or not businesses have a cogent theory or plan to make money in a net neutral economy, net carbon neutral.
But haven't they been thinking about that for a long time? They should have a plan.
I think most companies talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Sure.
And there's a lot of money to be made in prolonging the problem while acting like you're solving it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
And so there's just a fundamental disconnect in the incentives with boards and executives and public markets and investors, and everything, again, is like a little bit of a too big to fail mentality, where you look back to 2007, 2008, the assumption that everybody thought was a truth forever until the world ends was that housing prices are always going to rise.
Right.
So therefore you can create these shitty mortgage-backed securities that, as long as housing prices rise, we're going to be fine. And that, people talk about it being a Six Sigma event. It's like, yeah, but that assumption, we just took that as truth. We didn't, and I wasn't doing any of these models back at the point, so I'm probably going to say something and step in it. But the way that I look at it in retrospect was, well, we might have done a little bit of sensitivity analysis over whether or not housing prices were going to rise, and if so, for how long, and what are those things that contribute to housing prices rising.
Speaking of 2008, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please.
I worked in the financial district of downtown Manhattan, and I worked right next to Morgan & Stanley, and I worked down the street from JP Morgan Chase, right next to Citibank. You know what department I worked in? Risk management.
Oh, you're my kindred spirit.
Wow.
Well, sort of. I was the payroll, executive assistant chick for the whole team. But I was so glad to be in that department with American Express, because while everybody around us was scrambling and just falling apart, it was very quiet in our office every day. And man, if they hadn't done their jobs right, because American Express was one of the very few banks that was smooth sailing through that process. And every day that I left work and walked towards the subway, I would see 7, 8 people carrying their cardboard boxes because they had been let go that day.
Right.
And our jobs were secure. So thank you to risk management for that.
Yeah.
So do you think, you mentioned the markets recognizing whether companies are seriously moving toward this, what'd you call it? The shift in
Six Sigma?
No. The shift in
Carbon transition?
Yeah, carbon transition. Do you think that that's a key? The markets recognizing it, like the economic factors. How key do you think they are? And the reason I ask this is that it's one of the problems that I have with and this is where I usually step in it because people get emotional about it. But one of the problems that I have with the Greta Thunberg approach to calling out this issue is saying that economics shouldn't matter, and how dare you concentrate on economics. And I think that it's economics that are actually have to be brought into the fold to help make the transition. And I think actively talking that down is actually damages the goal. It's Santa Claus. It's fairyland.
I agree with you there for sure.
Yeah. So how important do you see that as being? You know, that was one of the first things you mentioned. Our market's going to recognize whether companies are making these moves or not, and reward them or not.
Yeah.
You know, so it seems like you probably recognize it as very important as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, the politics of it, though, to me is like that third rail that it's the wild card, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, economically, we subsidize fossil fuels to the tune of trillions, I'd say. I mean, maybe half a trillion every year. I mean, and correct me if I'm getting my numbers wrong, but
Right.
if I recall, I mean, if that stopped, you know, and even
Get the true cost.
yeah, or even shifted. I mean, the economics are there, I think, but is the political will there? And that's the freaking wild card. I mean, do you? I mean, obviously you consider that, but is that something you really find interesting?
Yes, I spent a lot of time, particularly over the past 4 years or so, delving into not just the political calculus, but also just how does a government work and how does governance work and what are the levers of government and where should government be involved and what is business good for and what is business not so good for. At the end of the day, like we're talking about incentives, and there's economic incentives that are hard financial. Will this make me $1 or $2? Pick the $2 option. But even if you lay over personal ego in large organizations or institutions where you're either the head of it and you might act against your own self-interest because it's going to preserve the institution, and you don't want to be the fall guy that was with the emperor that was in charge when Rome fell. I don't know who that was. Marty, you know?
No.
No.
Theodosius?
I don't mean to put you on the spot. You just strike me as a learned man.
No, that's very kind of you.
I thought Marty would know.
That's kind of you, but let's see, when Rome fell, no.
Well, we don't have to get stuck on it.
Anyways,
Yeah.
I think my broader point was that, politics matters, capital P politics matters in terms of what our government's going to do, but politics also matters in any organization that you're in. Politics matters in families, right? And again, not who'd you vote for, but like whose interests are going to be served by this decision, right? Right. So, I think that the economic argument is ultimately what I hope will act as a catalyst for positive change because the numbers are going to start making sense.
Right.
And the markets, I would posit that they're responding to what consumers are doing, what citizens are doing. So if you're no longer going to buy the thing that used to make a lot of money for a company, and that company has no alternative but to sell that thing, widget, whatever you want to call it, then that company is going to go out of business. And then where policy comes into impact that is whether or not we subsidize, to your point. But I think that what the past 18 months has shown the world is that optimizing for efficiency and cost is a great way to build a fragile system, and that baking resilience into whatever system that you create or build or evolve or whatever is a necessity going into this next decade or the rest of this century.
What does that mean, resilience?
I think the textbook definition is something like the ability to persist over time.
Mm-hmm. So in this scenario, what does it mean in baking resilience into your systems and, to avoid the pitfalls that we've seen over the last 18 months?
It means being able to stay popular with the millennials. That's what it means.
That's a long term. Yeah. And I know that's something that like many big companies, including perhaps yours, Michael, has to deal with is what are the millennials going to value? Is it still millennials or
millennials and Gen Zers?
Gen Z is after
those
millennial,
are the
right?
ones, yeah.
It's like, what are they going to value down the line? What are they going to want to purchase or not purchase? Or,
well,
is that going to change?
Even their sort of organizational structure in there, what I've been reading is that it's less hierarchical. It's more horizontal. Does that make any sense?
Sure.
I think that the way that it's played out in the professional world in I would say, more leading organizations or organizations in the limelight that get a lot of buzz in business press is about taking that idea of hierarchy and then either wholeheartedly or disingenuously saying, "Hey, we're really flat, right? And we're gonna hear you out with what you want to say, right? And we're gonna take your feedback and try to make a place work well for you." Now, there's a problem with that for people that aren't wholeheartedly into that, because if you ask a question and you get an answer to that question, and that answer is, "I want you to do something different," and you don't want to do something different, then you're in a little bit of a pickle there, because now you're not making good on what you had said, right? It was window dressing. I think that there are a lot of really good organizations out there that do have that commitment. But I also think that a lot of organizations might not know what they're opening themselves up to.
Meaning how fundamentally they might need to change if they open this door?
I mean, I'll go on a little bit of a limb here and try not to get myself in too much trouble. But
Get in trouble, Michael. Get in trouble.
So last summer was when I really had my kind of intellectual renaissance, so to speak, right? I was really inspired by a couple of books that I read and what was going on in the news, and the murder of George Floyd, and trying to understand what's going on with this Black Lives Matter movement. And then you saw a lot of corporations kind of hold up the moniker of Black Lives Matter, and everybody was like, "Wow, the corporations are taking a stand." But inherent in that Black Lives Matter argument is an economic argument that doesn't quite jive with a traditional, financial fiduciary's approach to running a large organization.
And in that, you mean the organization, Black Lives Matter, not just the sentiment, right?
I guess what I'm saying is, one way of interpreting what Black Lives Matter means is that the structural underpinnings of the way that we administer benefits in government, or the history of us administering benefits in government based on who is on the inside and who is on the outside, and also the way that businesses kind of run themselves, can clash with some of those ideals of that movement. Mm-hmm. So, before wholeheartedly embracing something, it's important to know, how far it goes.
So then my question would be, how much were they really wholeheartedly embracing that thing? I
don't want to be too cynical. I mean, I work with a lot of really, really amazing people that are good people, that are, in important decisions, not above my pay grade. I'm the guy that gets to throw rocks from the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
But I think it's not everybody has the luxury of delving deep into like what Martin Luther King's economic theory was, right? He was looking for social and economic justice in the way that he rolled things out. And, there were still communist scaries going around at that point in time. And, it was still during the Cold War. And so you don't hear as much about that portion of him. You hear a lot more about the social justice endeavors.
Right.
But they're one and the same if you pull back far enough and you take a long enough view.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been other leaders that delved into that as well, right? Especially during that time, that delved into those not just the social justice, but the economic justice. And the conspiratorial side of my brain wants to see a pattern where, when they really started to push on those economic justice levers, that's when they were killed.
I mean, when you ask somebody to give something up of value to them, that can create knee-jerk reactions or
friction.
A frictive response.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. I'm talking obscurities. I do want to get back to what you had said about a resilient organization, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And like the broader system or structure that got us to this point. And I think a lot of that has to do with consolidation, right? Mm-hmm. So what is a resilient system, or what is a fragile system? When global supply chains are concentrated very heavily in one area of the world, or when one company is responsible for a disproportionate amount of food for the United States or wherever it might be, if something goes wrong with that one organization or that one supply chain, then it breaks it really acutely, right? And the pain is felt right away and really hard. Whereas in that process of consolidation throughout the, 70s, 80s, 90s, big corporate conglomerates or large multinational corporations, you didn't feel the falling out of the mom and pops as viscerally unless it was you or unless it was your town.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, yes, we can get stuff cheaper and it's more readily available and it might be more convenient. But if that system were to break down, then there's not a whole lot of other options. So a resilient system is a system that has a level of redundancy baked into it and flexibility baked into it. So there's not a catastrophic point of failure that can effectively stop you in your tracks.
Like a corporation that would have two or three security operations centers in case there's an earthquake where one happens.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Business continuity is a big deal in that, right?
Yeah. And what I fear the most, I think, and it's funny how it dovetails into the Roman Empire, because I would just say that the Roman Empire is not dead; it's still going. And when did it pivot? I would say Constantine and Theodosius, when they took all the power away from women in the Christianity, and then made it what modern Christianity is today.
Marty's just trying to get on Britt's good side. But this is a repeated theme.
But what I fear is a slow degradation over time, because supply chain redundancies and issues like that, they've been talking about, even just specifically with pandemics, they've been talking about for decades. Now we've got a global pandemic and everybody shit the bed. Nobody was resilient. Not very many anyway. The government wasn't. So, I mean, I guess, and we've sort of always been this way as a country. I don't know that we weren't prepared for World War II. I don't think, as much as we should have been, given everything that was going on. If you were in charge, you'd have had us prepared.
I don't know about
but I'm
that.
sure of it. But
is that the problem, Marty? That because the question I came up with when Michael was talking, the question that popped in my head was, so if what we want is resilient systems as a society, whose job is it to make sure that happens? I mean, I guess the easy answer is politicians, but
the question is more, I think, not better framed. Your question is valid, but it's like, which system? If it's the system of the United States and our businesses and our economy, then it's our job. I mean, our representatives, our politicians, our businesses all need to, have that cooperation and be thinking about that stuff.
So thinking big picture and as opposed to what's best for me, my company, my bottom line this year, my shareholders, thinking big picture about the system.
Yeah. And I'm a big, I hear this term globalist thrown around like so gratuitously and stupidly. It's like critical race theory. Nobody can define it, or nobody that talks about it knows what it even is. But it's like, what is a globalist? Somebody called me a globalist. I said, is that because I strongly believe we're part of a global community and we all should be good citizens in that global community, recognizing the sovereignty of the United States of America? I love my country, but it's like these, there are non-resilient systems around the world for these things. But they're just never given enough attention until something bad happens. It reminds me of Silicon Valley, when in the security world in Silicon Valley, it's like with a lot of good, smart people, you try to convince them about needs for security resiliency or just security issues. And you don't get any budget until like somebody starts shooting on the YouTube campus or something like that. Then all the budgets go up and what you say. And a lot of it is because some of these uber wealthy people in the ivory towers, and I'm not speaking about any companies for which I worked, because they were or consulted, because they were really good and they were open to me. I mean that sincerely. But there's just this feeling I have that none of them have ever really had any kind of violence visited upon them. So when you talk about some things, it's just like, okay, yeah, right. But I'm going to throw more money into engineering because that's going to drive more revenue and.
It just doesn't become real until it happens.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that I mean, it's such a kind of crazy comparison, but I'm not to brag, but I'm the president of our neighborhood association.
Oh,
Michael.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Put it on your resume.
Give me an amen.
Which Thank you.
Neighborhood
Thank you.
Watch?
Neighborhood Watch is another organization, and you know that, Marty.
I'm sorry. I'm just jealous now.
But one of our community members, an older gentleman at the last meeting, was really passionately telling me about a crosswalk that had been promised crossing the really busy road a few blocks away. And thank you, Marty, for being
somebody needs to break the ice. No pun intended. For heaven's sakes!
It's our
Michael,
first guest here in the studio, and we really, I think, should celebrate appropriately.
Absolutely. Let's open.
But AJ, I didn't mean to go back to your story.
So he
go
was
back to the crosswalk.
Yeah. So he was. So he was. Cheers, guys! Cheers.
Cheers.
And this was a part of a development. They'd been promised a crosswalk, and then through some legal maneuverings and changes in what the reality was, they never got the crosswalk. And so I emailed the people in charge or people that could give me some answers. And
was it a strongly worded email?
It wasn't, not by my standards.
Okay.
And one part of the response that I got was, we don't really build crosswalks until people have been killed or injured.
Yeah, isn't that
what I mean? And it's kind of the same line of thinking. It's
a human thing, I guess.
Maybe so. Also, scarcity, limited funds, and they were clear about that. There's limited funds, and you can't just paint a crosswalk. You got to put a light in. You got to put all this different stuff in. I might just go paint the crosswalk for this dude across the road, like at 1 a.m. if anybody wants to join me.
Get forgiveness instead of permission there.
But there's some liability there though too.
But it is kind of like a similar mind space of, we will allocate attention and funds to this thing once we've been burned. And sometimes being burned means somebody's lost a life.
But if you're listening to guys like Michael, you're going to say, in the long run, and I'm not talking about the Adam Smith long run, I'm talking about, or is it Keynes? In the long run, we're all dead. One of them. But the value of that life is way more than the current. I know that everything's got to be a balance, right?
Yeah,
There's going to be lives lost, and we have to have those serious, hard conversations. But had people had more forethought in a lot of these areas, then the cost would be less.
Wouldn't it be so nice? I've just created a new role in life. You know how there's life coaches for individuals?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be so nice if there was a risk manager for marriages?
Yeah.
And you would
what would
meet
that
with
look
them
like?
Quarterly. You give them your info, your personalities, and then they could come to you later and say, "Okay, here's my report."
I think there are.
So this is somebody before the shit hits the fan.
Before.
You're going as part of a healthy relationship.
Just like you said, if a disaster happens, that's
that's when you go
then
in.
we need to go to marriage therapy.
Right.
Marriage continuity,
and then, Michael, you could come to me and say, "Okay, in 3 to 5 years.
Here's what I'm saying.
This might happen, so you definitely need to take that trip to Cabo."
Yeah. But do you think there was like somebody, I could just see the couple being like, "Fuck you, man. That is not true."
Oh, no, I love the idea.
Yeah. That's kind of a good idea.
Isn't that what prenups, and I mean, there's got to be a lot of people doing that.
But
like
active risk managing a marriage where you go in maybe, let's say once a month, once a quarter. Here's the kind of the things we're dealing with. Or things are great. Things are great. And you're just chatting. You're spending a little time.
And
therapy's therapy's when something's already bruised.
When something's been wrong and you're trying to fix it. Speaking of corporate, when I worked at Amex, we did those, the quarterly meetings and bi-annual meetings with your direct manager, and they talk about your performance and what's going well and what's not going well. And I hated them, but I understood the value of them. And, God love him. My husband put up with this. I went home and said, I want to have quarterly marriage meetings. And
like between the two of you.
Him and I, and we would talk about our performance and what's going well and what's not going well. I thought it was a fantastic idea.
I could see a guy feeling a little ill at ease.
Especially when you say performance. That's, not that there's any problem here. I'm just saying.
Needless to say, it didn't last long, but I liked
it could be a tough thing to do. But, during this pandemic, we started doing family scrums, which was just a morning meeting. Every meeting we were teaching the kids at home and checking in with everybody.
Crack of dawn. It was the crack of dawn when you did those things.
What are the goals?
Jesus.
What are the goals? What do we need? Where does somebody need more support? And they were really valuable.
Yeah.
And I definitely did not grow up that way. So that kind of stuff historically has made me uncomfortable. But they were really valuable. And to the point where the other day, Mickey and I were saying we should pick those back up because it can be easy, just like in a relationship, just like in a work corporate environment.
Or government,
it can be or government. It can be easy for things to kind of creep further and further away from, hey, what are our goals here?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that we want to accomplish, and where are we hitting those marks? Where are we straying? Where do you need support? I think there's real value in that, which all comes down to more communication, right?
Yeah.
You can be put in a basement really, it sounds like your job is basically doing the pleasure reading that most people do during their lunch break, but you get to do it all day long. Like what interests me, what's grabbing my attention, and let's study this more as I knock into the mic.
Well, are you in the basement, by the way? Do you have a red Swingland stapler?
I am not in the basement. I have outfitted a home office with lots of screens.
Roger that.
But
Okay.
so you could be put in the metaphorical basement
Sure.
of go do your research, fine.
Yeah.
But unless the communication is good, which means the communication on your end, but also the reception,
Oh yeah.
then it's all for naught.
You can be right, but if nobody wants to listen to you, then it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it, and studying psychology and like the way the brain works and the way that relationships and sociology and all that kind of stuff. Like, I read a lot about that too, because
And which was not your background in school. You were a history major, right?
I minored in history.
And an NCAA athlete too.
I had the best seat in the house, right next to the coach on the bench.
That's where I had my seat.
What sport?
I was a fencer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where was
Nice.
it? Where was it?
Duke.
Was it Duke?
Yeah, I went to Duke. My teammate actually was calling the Olympic fencing as the commentator.
Really?
Yeah, I turned it on and I was like, oh, there's Iptihouse. She's calling the.
Well, I went to Penn State and they have a really good fencing.
Yeah, they did have a good program.
Yeah, and my guy on my dorm floor was a fencer, so when I saw that on your thing, and he was a great athlete too.
So do you think, is cedar really the best wood for fences, guys? Or that's a terrible joke. It's such a terrible joke.
Endangered redwood.
Somebody kick me out of
That's
the room.
kind of a dad joke. I want to go back to this idea of resilient companies. I'm not a Gen Zer, but I am a
Gen
Zennial.
Xer. You're Gen Xer, right?
I'm a Zennial, apparently. But
Really?
With an X at the beginning. Because I was born in the analog world and then I transitioned to the digital world.
We can cut you in
During
half
all-
and
but
count the
that's all
rings
of
to
us.
find out how old you are if we have to.
I dare you, Marty.
No, would never.
I'm a Gen Xer.
Speaking of Greta Thunberg,
Yeah.
I can hear a lot of the younger people saying, why is nobody talking about sustainability? And what kind of role would that play in the resiliency of these companies? And I'm wondering how climate conscious your company is. And it's hard not to think that these large corporations that are saying they're going to be carbon neutral or saying they're working on sustainability are doing it for anything other than economic impact, or like the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's politically expedient for them.
Right. You don't want to be the company that's not saying it now in 2021.
But even sustainability, you have to be talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to get wrapped around the axle when you start thinking that way. But I think based on the fact that I read every day about the end of the world, I have to be a bit of a cautious optimist. So the way I'd frame that is that the thing that makes the business go are the people that run it. And at a certain point in time, the folks that are running these companies are going to go off and take their retirement and have a great life, and maybe they'll do great things for their communities, whatever it might be. But you got to replace that talent, and people aren't going to want to work for a company that they know is not making a positive impact, because we're at the point in time in our lives. So I'm a aged millennial, I guess. I don't know. I was just entering the workforce in 2007.
Okay.
So I lived my first 18 months of work was like, oh my God, am I going to lose my job? The world is ending.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you are taking that long view of the battle for talent is real, we're seeing it right now with people leaving their jobs in favor of more flexible work arrangements. People are not wanting to go back into the office. They're calling it the Great Resignation. And I don't know how much of that is hype and how much of that's actually going to be true. But I do think that
What are they going to do if they resign?
I think you go to people are
Come to Portland.
Finding better work. Yeah.
Finding a better job. Yeah.
people are what I'm reading right now. a fair amount of articles are saying that people are willing to take less pay for
To be able to work at
a
home.
more flexible work environment, or
Yeah.
to work for a company that more aligns with their values. So
Yeah.
I think particularly because it's becoming more tangible and more visceral, tangible and visceral.
Mm-hmm.
Those are tough.
We can do it.
They are.
You nailed it.
That people they're closer to it and they're more able to connect the dots. Younger folks in the workforce are. So I think part of the motivation is to retain the talent that's going to help propel your business forward.
Yeah, I think.
But again, you're saying this is client driven and worker driven, not unfortunately boardroom driven.
Isn't that
Going to
is
the
that the
point that you
best way
said
maybe
before.
to be though? I wonder if that grassroots from the bottom up, is that maybe the
resonates
best
for
way?
boards. I mean,
Well, in my experience, that's how a lot of large corporations change.
Yeah,
But is that the best way to enact change?
I don't
to
know.
wait for the workers or the clients to complain and say we want something better?
no. Better to get ahead of the curve, right?
There's an element of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you don't want to be too far in front of the curve because are you going to shoot yourself in the foot?
If
right?
you're a corporation, you
If
mean?
a publicly traded company came out and said, "Hey, we've completely been juicing our numbers and we see no actual reasonable, way that we're going to maintain this growth trajectory over the next X number of years,"
Yeah.
then overnight you've tanked the stock price of your company, right?
Yeah.
So you're simultaneously trying to understand what those big risks are and plotting a future together, and then responding to what the signal is you're getting in the meantime, right? So I think that there is obviously an element of shrewdness there, and obviously there's personal incentives, but I believe that what it means to be a fiduciary, and I know I've used that word before. You guys, should I nerd out
just
a little bit?
trust your due diligence.
Yeah, well, you're obligated to do what is best for the entity that you are representing.
Right.
So,
Okay.
when you get a financial planner, you damn sure better make sure that they're a fiduciary and not just trying to sell you stuff that they're on the take, right? Because there's organizations like that do that. So, and board members are considered fiduciaries in most cases, or in many cases, and you start doing just the math, and you look at population demographics, you look at the impacts of climate change and climate migration, you look at the prices of inputs, you look at the availability of different types of labor, and it gets harder and harder to make the case that you're going to continue on a trajectory in any kind of line of business, right? So, I guarantee you that 50 years ago, Philip Morris was looking at its total addressable market in a very different way than it is today, right?
Yeah.
And I also would posit that Philip Morris probably has a hard time attracting young talent. Like for like the best. Are you going to go to Philip Morris, or are you going to go for a company that you feel like is more, attuned to their values?
Is that ability to do that a sign of abundance for the workforce, and the ability to say, I want to get a job. It's important for me to get a job, but I am only willing to work for a company that aligns with my values. Is that a sign of abundance for the workforce? Because I have to think it is. If versus I'm getting the best job I can get in terms of pay, whatever the hell it is. I don't have the luxury to go into this other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on where your line of luxury is, and what you need, or what you think you need, or what you want. But in some cases, it's not an abundance argument; it's a scarcity argument. You look at the
Talent, the scarcity of talent, right?
I think scarcity of your geographical scarcity, right? So cities have higher housing prices than rural areas. And what you saw was people either moving closer to family, back where they came from, or getting out of Dodge and
Over the last year and a half.
Yeah, going and hanging out in the middle of nowhere and setting up shop there. And you get out there and wow, it's pretty nice. I can see the sky at night. I can, cook with my family and do all these things. And, I don't need to buy a tiny overpriced home near the office to get in and out every day. So maybe I'm making less money, but I could be financially better off taking that lower paying job, buying a lower cost home in a place that doesn't tie me to a particular geographical area. So I think a lot of things are happening at once. I don't think that there's any one like silver bullet, because if you figure that out, please.
Yeah, but I think the cities will be back to a certain degree, not as much because of those things you just said, but I remember the last company I was working for, their real estate team was, this was back in like 2015 or 16, was they were looking at like shared desk space, and they were saying how many people are actually coming into the office. They knew who was getting the job done. How many people are actually using this office space that we had all over the world? And it's like, we can cut down on real estate costs and office costs by 60% or 40% if only 60% of the people are actually there at any given time, and people can just share desks. And so I think that was moving well before the pandemic. People were moving into that direction. I think the pandemic accelerated it massively and really, brought it to the fore. But I think, the pendulum will swing a little bit back. I think the camaraderie and the buzz and the just the vibrance of being in a city will come back to a certain degree. I don't think cities are dead by any stretch.
No, I don't think so either.
But it's going to be different though. It's. I don't think we're going back to where we were.
Well, and some of those people that, it's easy to be in the city and fantasize about living in the country until you move to the country and realize for some people it's not for you.
Totally.
You know what it made me wonder when you were commenting on that, Michael, does that mean, if not the death knell, the contraction of certain industries? If, let's say the workforce is saying, or at least, let's be real. It's the educated workforce, right? That's,
I'm speaking primarily about knowledge workers.
Right. So
that's going to become a big part of our economy, right?
Yeah, for sure. But so if the workforce is able to say,
no, I don't think that's fair at all. I know too many people who don't have the degrees, do work, and frequently, thanks to the younger generation who includes values and how they want to work, they frequently will either change jobs or look for work that is just as meaningful or valuable to them, regardless of what the pay or their degree is.
Can we label them working class people?
Sure.
Yeah. So do you think it's just as likely that you find working class people saying, I'm only willing to work for a company that aligns with my values?
I'm just saying in my personal life, I talk closely with people more in the working class who say, I'm going to get out of this job and find another one because this job doesn't make me happy, or it doesn't align with my values, or I don't like the work ethic here. And they'll find something different. And I think I can see that. I think that's not just a scarcity issue. I do think it's generational as well.
I believe that too. Yeah.
I think it's generational.
We weren't taught to look into the corporation's ethical values when we looked for work.
No, and that's what
we were taught by our boomer parents to look for a good salary or pension or IRA options.
And so that gets to what I'm asking is, are there some industries that are going to see contraction? Take the finance industry, for example. Forever through my lifetime, it's been the best and brightest, even if they're actually more talented at doing something else. Especially if they're coming out of the Ivy League or something equivalent, they're going to finance because they're going to make a shitload of money. They're going to make fuck you money. Their plan is they're going to make fuck you money and then change jobs sometime in their 30s or early 40s. Most of them get addicted to that money and stay. So are there some industries where if the workforce is saying, I want to work for companies that align with my values, is the workforce also saying, I want to work in industries that align with my values? And so what does that mean for an industry like finance, which forever for the last 30 years has had its pick of talent?
Well, I think you're seeing right now a lot, and again, we can debate over how earnest the public perception is or the PR is, but you're seeing a massive rise in funds and investment vehicles that are centered around ESG, so environmental, social governance, and you're seeing major financial institutions like BlackRock saying, "Hey, we actually want to see in your plan the disclosures that show us how you're going to get us through here profitably through this transition." Because you're also looking at, okay, so there's regulation aspects coming down the pike too. Europe's going to have probably the most aggressive. It's going to be the leading indicator of where environmental regulations are going. So right now they're working on, and I'm going to butcher some of this, so we'll talk in kind of broad concepts.
Yeah.
They're going to put into place regulation that is a carbon tax cross-border. So if I import stuff from outside of Europe and I don't mitigate the carbon that was used to make that thing, then it's going to be taxed on the way in, because in Europe, you're going to be taxed on how clean you run your business.
How do you mitigate for it? Like, can you give us an example of how a company would mitigate for that?
Moving from coal-fired plants to solar-powered or wind-powered, or
nuclear.
Okay, so you don't mean there was a certain amount of carbon created in creating our product, but to mitigate for that, we've planted trees.
Or found a way to use renewable energy, or close the loop of your system to take stuff into it.
So it's not like the celebrities flying private jets and saying that they're mitigating for it by
buying
carbon offsets.
I mean, sure, and we're going to need it all, right? We're going to need, like, that money's going to go into somehow mitigating carbon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carbon sequestration is a technology that's still pretty nascent, but there's some promising things going on. So I think we're going to have to do it all, right? We're going to have to reduce the amount of carbon that we use to make our widgets. And we're also going to have to take carbon out of the atmosphere.
Mushrooms are going to be the key for that.
I mean, if there's anything that could help us understand how connected we are to each other and everything.
Dude. Mushrooms is it?
It is it. Without a doubt, it is it.
Yeah. And, I do think our economy in the next 20 years or so. I mean, right now, if you is going to be mostly knowledge based, unless politicians pull that back proactively. Like, I think in 5 years there'll be enough technology for long haul truckers to just. This was from Michael Yang's book, but to just drive by themselves until they get to the depots, and then the short hauls take them around. Mm-hmm. Unless politicians stop that, that's going to happen. You'll see along the highway going 55
you
miles an hour.
You mean automation?
Yeah, automation.
The long haul trucks, not the truckers.
No, yeah,
the truckers are at home without a job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yeah, the knowledge economy. If you took the top 5 out of Silicon Valley, I'd say revenues, it probably would equal the next 30 or 40, more traditional industrial companies.
How do we define the knowledge economy? Can we kind of define that?
I'll let the futurists do that.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take a swing, take a stab at it. Well, I think it,
by the way, we're all shirtless by now. So.
Yeah, that's true. Does anybody want me to turn this fan on, by the way? It's a little stuffy in here.
I could use the fan, but if it's going to mess up the mics, don't do it.
No. I might give us a little buzz on the mics, but I'll turn it on for a second. We'll be loosey-goosey.
All right.
And it gives Michael a chance to think about the profundity bomb he's going to drop on us.
How to define the knowledge economy.
Yeah, what is that?
I mean, I think the way I think about it is you're behind a computer screen and you're using your brain to have conversations or push numbers around on spreadsheets or make presentations and advocate for different decisions that a machine just can't beep, boop, boop do, right? There's always going to be a degree of that, but I think that machines and computers are going to gradually replace more and more. But I do think that there's going to be knowledge jobs that go away and are replaced just as much as I would call them like physical jobs.
I mean, like radiologists?
I think radiologists, but I also think of like people that are crafts people, people that make things.
Would you call that a physical? You're calling that a physical job or a knowledge job?
I think it's a physical job. I think.
So which knowledge jobs do you see going away?
Oh gosh, paralegals, because
okay,
the pattern recognition in text is starting to get really, really good.
Copywriters, sports journalism, those are already disappearing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think some of them are disappearing. But I still think the inertia is towards, like, you could say a trucker is sitting by a computer right now, but I just think that sooner or later the human factor is going to evolve out of. I mean, I look at that as what you were talking about, someone who's artistic. That's going to be like sort of artisanal work. I don't think that's going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think anywhere a computer, like a radiologist, would be considered a knowledge job and a high level, high pay,
high education,
high education. And there's already studies, and I said Michael Yang, I meant Andrew, but but right now computers can already do a better job of detecting abnormalities on
shades of gray
on these images than the most experienced radiologist. So
right. So what do we do? So as a futurist, that's got to be one of the big issues that's out there is what do we do about automation, about the masses of people that are going to lose jobs? And I mean, not to be cynical about it, but then when it comes to corporations who are wanting to sell things to people, if they aren't making money, who are you going to sell it to?
Yeah. Well,
Ghostbusters.
I think you're going to get to the core of my bleeding heart with that question.
Yeah, let's get there. Let's get to the core. You've been protecting yourself for way too long.
Yeah. Let that shield down, man.
I think personal philosophy wise, I think my big thing is that, human life has intrinsic value. And I guess I could just leave it there, right? And if I look at, trends over time and history and the rise and fall of civilizations, you get to a point where anytime there's a big enough discrepancy between people that have stuff and people that don't, and the group of people that have nothing to lose gets big enough, things are going to change in one of three ways. Either the leaders are going to realize that, okay, we need to do something about this because our position is untenable, and you see a level of reform that restores dignity to all those lives that don't have it. And when I say dignity, I mean, access to sanitation and food and shelter and reasonable rule of law and protection under the law. People should be clothed, safe, like that. I don't see a reason for the cruelty of being well, it's your fault. Right.
Right.
And I know it's very idealistic and you're always going to have pain and suffering in the world. But at the end of the day, like, I think that that's a pretty solid thing to strive for and a good way to ground yourself. So just kind of start there. Right. So, on the one hand, you have this, reform. On the other hand, you flounder into, obscurity, like, the Roman Empire to some extent, right? You look at the way that Italy's being governed and the way that its financial situation and prospects for people. It's tough,
right?
Or you have some sort of an event that is extra legal, a revolution, so to speak, right? And so I think that if people are taking a long view, and by people, I mean, bigwigs that have control over these decisions are truly taking a long view, then you realize that you can only continue a business model that involves people consuming things, right? I'm sure that there's other business models that you can, cybersecurity or whatever, I don't know. But if your business model is fundamentally to deliver a good or a service to another person, you're constraining your total addressable market if those people don't have the capacity to buy what you're selling. Mm-hmm. So there is an element of self-interest there. I mean, I think sometimes that's the way to persuade people because they are acting as fiduciaries. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's so wrong to have that as my sneaky thing that I don't mention, which is that I think that people should have their basic needs met.
Well, I think we all agree on that. I mean, I wouldn't let anybody just go away.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say that neither would I really want to blunt progress so much because, like, having had family members that worked in the coal mines in Pennsylvania and other parts of the country. They don't want those fucking jobs. I mean, well, they want them in lieu of nothing else,
right?
But they'd rather be up on a windmill, fixing a windmill or installing one, and probably making more money. Mm-hmm. So, when you hear politicians talking about, we're going to keep coal jobs, it's like they don't want those jobs. They want jobs, and they want that dignity that comes with it, and the money that comes with it, but they don't want to go down into the earth and. Yeah. And endanger themselves in their lives.
Yeah. Well, that gets back to like what's politically palatable and what sells in a limited frame of attention, right? and what actually, if you run the numbers and, you make the slow argument to bring somebody around.
Right.
I think we don't quite have the conditions to make those slow arguments on a regular basis.
Or leadership.
No, but I don't think, I agree with Michael. I don't think we have the constitution as a people and as a society to make those slow arguments. I think maybe
the resiliency.
Do you mean
not the legal
we as a
constitution.
people, like we Americans, we as humans, or
Well, I would say specifically, I'm talking about in the Western world. Those slow arguments are a much tougher sell.
Mm-hmm.
They're becoming more palatable in certain arenas like climate change.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's, when you're talking about a scarcity of attention. And then if you're also talking about specifically in this country, in the media culture, getting that information out and what are we going to invest in when it comes to the information we're sharing, it's going to be what grabs the attention right now, today.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff is just too quote unquote boring.
Well, yeah, the carbon exchanges were proposed by Milton Friedman in the 80s.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like, so, once Obama mentioned it, it became toxic to half the country.
Well, and even the
and
infrastructure
attractive to
bill
the other
right
half.
now, the infrastructure bill right now that's muddling its way through Congress. They're even having issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
How would a large corporation such as yours that you work for play a role in establishing or securing the basic needs of every individual? I mean, if that's your core philosophy, does that play a role in the work that you do?
To some extent. I mean, I think that let me take a beat here and think about how I want to respond.
Take a sip. Take a sip of
Yeah, take a sip.
I'm just wondering. I just think of
That's a good
Jeff
question.
Bezos and his Dr. Evil laugh after he flew up
And
in
his-
space.
his phallic spaceship.
I
Did you
heard
hear-
about that. It was roughly. I didn't.
His spaceship looks like a penis.
It's
Oh, it was
Don't they all?
A very small penis.
this
but
one especially looked
no,
like
it
one.
was
Yeah.
like much more dick-like than most space.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah, it really
let's be
was.
clear, a very small penis, but still.
Right.
But he gave some sort of, ego boosting conference at the end, and he said, "I'd like to thank all the Amazon employees and
They
workers
made this possible, something like
because
that.
you made this happen." Ha ha! It just
While wearing
put
a
a sour
Stetson.
taste in my stomach.
Oh, I saw that.
Yes,
I did
while
see
wearing
that
a cowboy
picture.
hat.
I did that photo.
He looked like the guy from Dr. Strangelove that was riding the
Yes,
out of
he
for
there.
did.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe there's just no sense of irony in someone like that?
Oh my
Well,
God.
I call
Clearly
that
not understanding.
I call that the Michael Jackson effect.
Okay, which is what? You're so
where
famous?
You're so
So rich.
surrounded and insulated by people that are telling you what you want to hear that
Yeah.
you're not getting feedback from people outside of that bubble. And that happens to everybody to some extent.
Well,
right?
it was my plan with Britt and Marty. It hasn't worked out that way. They really haven't been filling their roles.
We worship you, AJ. I think that AJ's question about and your introduction of the carbon situation is so important and it's so really topical. But dude, I have to ask you two things that are kind of bees in my bonnet, as Britt likes to mock
we got
me
another
for.
bee in your bonnet.
Marty has a lot of bees
so
in his
many bees
bonnet.
in your bonnet.
It's one, artificial intelligence and how that affects the future.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I know you hate the completion question, but are we going to survive as a civilization? Is our technology going to overtake us, and will we destroy ourselves?
What?
Oof, you're saving the easy questions. So I think what you're talking about is the singularity, right? Where like we're essentially the matrix, and all the machines are connected, and we no longer have a purpose.
Or we just kill ourselves, whether it's environmental degradation or nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, I honestly think that's more likely than the machines getting us. In the long run.
So they were two sort of. I guess I mixed those questions. I am curious about the singularity, but I'm also curious about, as a species, saying we don't reach the singularity. As a species, do we just destroy ourselves?
Depends on where we're at in the year 2050.
Yeah. Well.
Honestly,
That's,
that's
are you a
What does that
politician?
mean? What
You
is
running
that?
for
No,
office?
that was almost
Yeah,
a
that's
non-answer.
right.
Michael.
Are you
What is
running
that?
for office?
What does that mean? It depends that's like saying it depends on if we do or if we don't.
Exactly what it is.
we've got some time. I guess my point is like if we do not get the way that we run ourselves to either be net negative or net neutral by that year, then the cascading impacts of climate change are going to be harder and it's going to make it harder and harder for humans to inhabit the planet.
Yeah.
Well, what do
Yeah.
you think is going to happen?
Well, we could go to Mars. I don't know.
No, I mean, do you think we'll get there? I think we'll.
Oh yeah,
we'll
I'm
figure
super
that
optimi-
out.
I think we'll figure it
Yeah,
out.
I do
think,
too.
But I'm not so optimistic about not destroying ourselves in another way.
Like
Yeah.
war?
Yeah, like a nuclear holocaust or
Yeah, I mean,
that and other things.
I've been doing some interesting reading on just ethics in AI, and there were some cool things going on there where like they trained an AI to be good at a video game, and it turned out that the AI taught itself just to commit suicide over and over and over again.
Wow.
Once it got to the point of like optimizing the game because it couldn't.
So as the game started, it just committed suicide?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was a game where like a wolf would go around and like gobble up sheep or something, and
that never happens.
Yeah, right. And it's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to butcher it again, but you would go around and you would gobble up the sheep, and you would get time deductions for not getting the sheep fast enough or hitting an obstacle or
Or
something.
having
like that.
gastric reflux.
So yeah, something like that. And so they the machine eventually like went down this like machine learning exercise tangent where it just committed suicide over and over and over again.
And because the game became pointless to it?
I think there's arguments about that of like, okay, well, this is no longer fun for me as a machine. There's nothing for me to optimize. So now I'm just going to end the game as quickly
That's
as
so
possible.
cool, man. That's
Yeah.
so interesting.
But I think that kind of, that's the edge case that gets you thinking, right? Like that's pretty crazy that a machine's going to do that. But I think that the way that we design systems, and I think fundamentally we're going to pull this out for a couple of reasons. Chiefly that by virtue of the fact that we are starting to see more representation from different kinds of people in boardrooms.
I like that. Yeah.
And frankly, in companies that aren't going to take the party line from their line manager. As you start to see those views represented, and part of it's styles, right? Like company culture is based around how decisions get made and how people communicate. And for a really, really long time, like the way you do business, like I couldn't work for a company looking like this, right? I know this is a podcast, but I'm wearing like a trucker hat. I have long hair and a handlebar mustache.
You look like you could
with
play
no
Jesus
shirt.
in a community
Yeah.
theater production.
Yeah.
I would say,
No,
right?
or like a cool bassist in a jam band.
Same,
Wow.
yes.
Wow. All
Yeah.
right.
But
I'll bet you Jesus would be a cool bassist if he lived today.
He was
yeah.
actually. He was.
He was actually.
He was an acoustic bass.
Yeah.
You know,
And it was a
goes
cello.
without saying.
It was a cello.
Keep the compliments
Cactus
coming,
strings.
guys.
It was a cello.
But my point is like the way to be successful is changing, and I think it takes into account that like command and control, I am the boss and I know better and we'll do it this way because I said so, is not a super tenable style to have going forward. And people have figured out to unlock the best in one another, it requires a not one size fits all approach.
I love that.
That is a lot more human.
I love that. You really think that's happening?
I mean, again, I might be suffering from being in a bubble, but like I feel really good about where I work and the way that my teams communicate and the level of psychological safety that environment creates. And but it's very like I could be in a different area of the same company and have a very different experience. But I think it's happening enough where people will be like, "Whoa, these guys are doing really well. Like they must be onto something. What's your secret?" Like, well, we
listen to people.
We listen to people.
I don't think that's Pollyanna. I'm still just nervous. I mean, one of the beautiful things about AI that I had recently read was that for something like a decade, there were 10 supercomputers working on unraveling the mathematical mystery of some biological molecule, and it hadn't cracked it. And somebody wrote an AI program on one supercomputer that cracked it in a month.
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit. But then I go back to, and I'm forgetting the name of these books, but this book I read about close calls during the Cold War. And literally a colonel in the Soviet Air Command got all the levels checked, boxes checked. An American launch is in progress. Launch counterstrike, and if he put it up to the political apparatchiks, none of them are going to take a chance. He stopped and he's like, wait a minute. And he asked his radar operators, he goes, tell me this again. All the computers are saying there's an American missile launch. And they're saying, yeah, we see ICBMs coming our direction from America. And he's like, but how many? They said 5. He's like, if America was going to launch a full-on preemptive strike, they're going to use more than fucking 5 ICBMs. This can't be right. And they're saying, sir, but this is what the computers say. This is what the radar say. He's like, I'm not sending it up. I'm not. And then he just crossed his fingers for 20 minutes and until they discovered, the missiles never arrived. Right. And it was a flock of geese, they thought. But it's like that close. That close.
So that's human intuition that perhaps can't be replaced, which then maybe goes back to what you're saying, Michael, which is listen to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this idea of ruminating and exploring over a future filled with Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminators is maybe more of a guy thing.
Oh, could it be?
I don't know. I've never.
I think it's more like Her, the movie, like the movie Her, where you have operating systems. It's not. I think robots.
I think of Britt more as Sarah Connor, so I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
They're both sexy in their own route.
Yeah, of course.
I've never asked myself that question seriously, and I guess I was surprised you did. Well, I think of every single role that
I'm surprised that
every single role or job that I've done in my life. Singer, actor, mother, all the jobs that I've had, aside from my corporate job and being an Uber driver, there is no AI that could take over what I have done in my life.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things
eventually actor, it might.
Sure.
Graphics, yeah.
Mother, not a
no,
chance.
no, definitely not that. And that's why.
And what about other roles that maybe an economist, but not a behavioral economist or a social scientist?
Sure. Maybe
that the intuition that you say and the foresight and being able to see the difference between a flock of geese and a missile.
It's a human thing.
I think it's going to, I don't think, I'm not saying it's going to completely take over and we're on the precipice of the singularity. I'm just saying that looking forward 5 to 10 years in my mind, there's going to be massive changes.
There are.
Sure.
It's interesting though, because you could make I think a valid argument that moment in some cases has already arrived. There was a really good
like right under our noses.
I don't know if it's like the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. I'll have to I don't know, we can put it in the notes or whatever, but they were talking about TikTok's algorithm and how good it is.
Yes, produced by my friend Robert Libetti.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was, well, please convey how impressed I was with that piece. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And the idea was that they get one variable, and that is how long you linger over a piece of content on this stream of endless content. And within 20 minutes, 40 minutes, they're able to peg what your interests are and then essentially crop you off and send you down a rat hole.
And that's their only algorithm, is how long you're lingering over a video?
They have other variables that they look at,
I think that's the main one.
That's like the big
what do you pause on?
It's so simple and elegant, right? Like, what are you pausing on? And then we're going to serve you stuff based off of that.
And this is why, speaking of moms, total side tangent, this is why Instagram never has figured me out, because I'll be scrolling on something and then the kid yells, "Mom," and I stop, and who knows, I'm pausing over some vibrator ad, and then I run off.
Hello.
They don't show me any vibrator ads.
I get them all the time.
I know, a vibrating hairbrush.
That's right.
It stimulates the hair follicle.
A massager.
I still get Google ads for stuff I have zero interest in, and I'm convinced I'm convinced it's because I constantly am interrupted and leave the screen open on something I just don't care
I'm not
about.
interested in orgasms either, Brett.
Yeah, I'm not interested in anal
So
beads.
glad.
Wait a minute, Marty, gross.
Sorry. Yeah, right. AJ.
That's all right. It's not like my mom's going to listen to this or anything.
Well,
But so I guess where I was going with that, right, is so there's the machine that's doing the thing, which is let me figure out what you like. But the business strategy is to take as much of your time as possible, because that's how they're going to make money, is by monetizing your attention.
Engagement, yeah.
And so if engagement is the thing that you're going after is an end in itself, not engaged to buy my product,
your
engaged
intention.
because you are the product, right? If a product
That's exactly right.
if the product is free, you're the product, right? That's how the adage goes, right? And so I think part of the whole idea of like, are the machines going to destroy us, is less Terminator Insidious and more like, what are the incentives that we're building these machines to do things for?
And what are the fallouts in our society to those things? Because then the downside of something like TikTok, where you go down rabbit holes and that starts to color your worldview.
And they don't have the capacity to vet all of those videos down the rat hole.
Yes.
So what they found, that people that were clicking on like sad videos went down this like sad like video rat hole that got into like cutting and suicide and all these really terrible things.
Wow.
That these people like were like, that's what they were getting served up on the reg on their TikTok, because the algorithm figured out that's what got them to stay on it.
And that is having an effect in our physical world.
Yes,
our interactions.
like you said, is AI affecting us now more than we think? I mean, look at the insurrection on Capitol Hill and all the people who are affected by social media and those algorithms that make them go down the rabbit hole of social media and live in a alternate reality.
You mean the peaceful demonstration?
Well, listen, man. I mean,
It was hijacked by Antifa,
and that's that, and that's easy to do. But I ask myself, what am I living at? I mean, I've really disconnected quite a bit over the last probably 8 months, by choice, and it's come with a certain amount of ignorance. I knew of that Bezos had done something, but I didn't see the press conference. I didn't see the penis. Damn it!
It's like actually uncanny, by the way. If you look at it,
circumcised or uncircumcised?
no, the
German soldier,
the spaceship that Mike Myers' character, Dr. Evil, in Austin Powers, is launching.
Like
it looks exactly like the Blue Origin.
It's the most aerodynamic shape.
The German soldier, not the aardvark.
But it, what am I missing? What fantasy am I living in?
What aren't you missing?
What untruth am I steeped in? It's easy for me to point out other people, and I have fun doing that sometimes, much to the chagrin of the people close in my life. But
it's a very
what am I
good
missing?
point with all of us living in the Pacific Northwest. We're a very progressive liberal society, and we forget to look at what other people's experiences are.
It depends on how far outside the city limits you're willing.
It changes fast.
It changes pretty quick.
It changes really fast, for sure.
But I think another thing that I've learned, just I guess maybe through work, maybe just through going through my own trials and tribulations, is like, you're always going to be a fucking hypocrite about something.
Oh, that's a good point, man.
Like, there's no way to just live a completely just moral life on its face. I think that
we're all hypocrites about something.
Something. Everybody has their own stuff. And it's not, maybe it's not like a huge moral failing, right? But like, I don't know, the way I think about it is I just want to eliminate the systemic shittiness in my life to the extent that I can. And if I have a bad day and I make a bad decision, have a little bit of grace to forgive myself.
Dude, that's a really valuable point.
I want that on a t-shirt. I want to eliminate all the systemic shittiness in my life.
Yeah, but then in really fine print.
Britt, I'm going to get
make
that
a bad
for
decision. Dude, we're at an hour and a half, so we should probably wrap it up.
I have a few more AI questions.
But how do you feel about coming back and kind of being a repeat guest, and we just shoot the shit for a while about
So we get to hang out with cool people and drink beer and talk about interesting things.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
Nice compliment.
I mean, we might sit in a hot room. It's a little warm in here.
That's why we have our shirts off.
I like it.